What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of A Great Conversation here on Nerds and Suits. Today, my guest is Jeff Sneider, the Sneider himself, one of the greatest Schmoedown players of all time, a member of two different championship teams, a singles player, somebody you guys enjoy watching in the Schmoedown, and a really smart, passionate movie fan. So Jeff and I talk about a lot of cool stuff today, but most notably, we do get to kind of deep dive on movies, which is fun. I don't do it that often on this channel, and I get to do it with Jeff here. So hope you guys enjoy the episode. A big time thank you to all of the Infinity patrons in the Nerd Network. We've got Lucas Shawshek and Nicole Krafik supporting at the highest level, so big time ties straight, and stay tuned at the end of the episode for all the double diamond patrons, for all the platinum patrons, and diamond if you guys want to see or hear your name in the end credits. Speaking of Patreon, there are awesome new perks just introduced starting in October, as well as doing cover songs, as well as including your guys' questions here in the interviews with my guests. I'm also going to be doing a Schmoedown training tier where I'm going to scrimmage with you guys once a week. I'm going to do a 1v1 scrimmage match against a randomly selected patron at the diamond or above level once a month, which should be a lot of fun, kind of going through my process as I intend to come back stronger than ever and share that with you guys. So get excited. There's a lot of really cool stuff coming on Nerds and Suits, but right now you guys should just enjoy this interview with Jeff Sneider because he was a treat to talk to. So thanks for watching and enjoy the show.
That she wants is another baby, and she's gone to my... Oh, Ben Bateman, how are you?
Wow, look at this guy. He came ready. He came prepared. You were waiting for me.
Oh yeah, I had a whole bit, man. I got Austin in the background. I got my ball. Make a swish.
Wow. Yeah, you're a big basketball guy, right? Weren't you going to play like Nost and Rocco at one point? Wasn't that like a thing that was going to happen?
It was never going to happen because we both know John couldn't get up and down the court.
I feel like it was legitimately going to happen. Like we were all talking about it, and then I saw John one day, and he was like, "Yeah, I hurt my knee. I was going to go one-on-one with Sneider. I was going to go one-on-one with Sneider. I was going to crash the boards and box him out." But
he's going to be like, "Oh yeah, I woke up this morning and then I realized I'm 47."
Aren't you like 47, 46?
I just look 47. That's a common mistake.
No, it's a standard joke. People talk about Rocco being old. People talk about you looking old. So it's one or the other. But I appreciate you coming on the show.
Would you rather be old and look young, or be young and look old?
I think I would rather be. When I was a kid, I always wanted to be older, right? When you're a kid, you want people to take you seriously. They want you to, you're real mature for your age. You want to hang out with the older kids, right? When is the age, do you think, that it happens that people no longer want that? Do you think it's like 25? Maybe it's when you start to actually feel old.
I think 30 is the number where, people are like, it's not like cool to be 30. It's like, oh man, now I'm old. My 20s are over.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm 32 now. And I got to tell you, like the amount of like, it's just downhill from here that I feel on a day-to-day basis is pretty rough. I don't actually think that it is, but it's hard to escape that feeling somehow in your 30s. I don't know. You're in your 30s, so you feel that or no?
Sure. Yes, I feel like it's impending doom. I can definitely tell that your eyes were 2 shades brighter blue a couple years ago, but with each passing year, they're just going to dim and dim and dim until the light goes out.
Yeah. So guys, if you need to see a therapist, if you're just kidding. No, that's not what this episode's about. I am seeing a therapist. Actually, it's been very helpful for me this year. This is the first time I've seen a therapist since high school. Cause it's, pandemic's rough. You're doing the pandemic thing out there, right? Out in Boston with your parents. That's what you're doing?
I'm with Dad. It's just the two of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me on that. I knew that. I'm sorry.
It's all good. I see the family, my baby niece and whatnot, and the brothers, but otherwise I have like no social life. It's me and Austin Powers back here.
Yeah, man. I can't imagine. This is funny. We're gonna talk about this because my mom, she watches all the action content. But I don't think she really watches the Nerds and Suits content. It was because when she asked me when I started the Patreon, do you want me to switch my patronage over? And I told her, no, because it feels like I'm stealing from something that we worked so hard to build. But because of it, the only notifications she gets on my content, it's only action content on that Patreon. So if she doesn't see any of the Nerds and Suits stuff,
well, I'm gonna send her.
Don't do it. So don't do it because I'm planning right now on doing a road trip to Seattle to surprise her. She doesn't know it's coming.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and my older brother is going to go for a walk.
That would be cool. I don't want to ruin that.
And I'll be special. Who knows? This will probably be the one she watches. And I've said it on other Nerds and Suits content. Mom, if you're watching this, just fucking tell me that you saw this because I'm going to put in all this work to surprise you. And if you knew the whole time, it would be rough.
Just play along and have a plate of cookies ready.
No, she knows I'm more likely to come to Seattle. She's been like begging me. I told her if she bought me a really expensive guitar, I would come to see her. But she didn't go for that. So, now I'm just going to do it anyway. So
You're a good kid.
Yeah. Well, I try. I'm excited to do it though. So, but anyway, all that being said, I'm going to be in Seattle for a few weeks with my mother and the whole of my brothers lives there as well. I'll be doing that thing, retracing the childhood footsteps. What's it like being in your room from growing up?
It's a trip, man. It's all my old VHS tapes and all my old ratings of movies. Has not changed. And yeah, it's just everywhere I look, it's just a walk down memory lane. So it's fun.
What do you got in terms of VHS in there? Any good highlights? Do you have like the Titanic double set, the double VHS?
I have a million things, dude. I did not have
double.
Titanic double though. Most of my stuff I recorded off of cable, so I would make my own tapes. I had these 6-hour tapes, and back then you had to be very precise with when you hit the button, and I had it down to a science. Like I knew it's going to take like 4.5 seconds for the recording to actually kick in, so you have to go 4 seconds beforehand when you want to start. Yeah, it was a lot of fun putting those like mix movie tapes together.
I have this one memory. I've talked about this on various action shows in the past, but I was walking home from the bus stop. I was probably 12 years old, and there was a yard sale, a rummage sale, and they had a big stack of recorded tapes, exactly the ones you're talking about. But these were the double-sided 6 hours. They were 12-hour tapes. On each side, you could get 6 hours, and they were selling them. This is an early form of piracy, obviously, because they were all recorded off television movies. And they were like, yeah, $1 a tape. You get $1 a tape. You get 6 movies, right? So I bought all of them. I think there was 6 or 8 of them. And it's all from 1998, 1997, 1998. It's 96, 97, 98, right in there. I can't remember exactly the year, but all the movies are exactly from then. And I've seen all those movies just a shitload of times. I watched, do you remember the movie Most Wanted with Keenen Ivory Wayans and John Voight, the thriller where he's a disgraced army guy? Remember this?
I have to say that was not one that I went back to when I was 14.
Okay, yeah, it's I'd seen
back then.
yeah. There's a bunch on there. The Edge, which is one of my all-time favorites, that was on there. I watched The Edge a lot of times.
On there because I live for that John Travolta movie.
It wasn't. It would have been right before that, so it would have been
okay.
I don't know if I got a Travolta one on there. Oh, I might have actually. Come to think of it, Michael or Phenomenon might have been on there. Yeah, now that I think about it,
big ones in the mid-90s. Phenomenon. I think.
Yeah. So I watched a lot of those ones, and those are a lot of my favorite memories of movies in the 90s were those tapes. So I definitely can relate to that thing. Have you always been a movie guy? Since you were a really little kid, you always knew that they mattered to you a lot?
I would say 12 years old. That's when I started keeping track of everything that I saw. It started with Mission Impossible in Twister. It was Twister, then Mission Impossible. That was 1996. So that's when the movie nerd blossomed within me, and God, I'd love to not care about movies as much as I do, but unfortunately, I'm cursed.
It doesn't give you some amount of emotion to because I mean you can tell me if I'm totally way off base here, but I feel like I'm similar to you in the sense that I've ingested them for so long on such a consistent level that it's hard to even, when I think about them, it's hard to feel emotional about movies. Something has to happen to actually make me feel something. It has to be an incredible movie or some memory that reminds me of a really special experience as a kid I had watching a movie. But by and large, there's a glass case of emotion that that I'm stuck in with movies because they all just feel it feels like my job. I don't know. I mean, I know it has to feel like your job, right?
I am very emotional, so I'm a big crier. When this lower lip quivers, I know you're getting an Oscar. So no, I mean, I would not say. I think everything, I almost think of my life in terms of different movie points. Where was I in life? Well, I was at the screen stage of my life. I was at the Brokeback Mountain phase, whatever the hell it was.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's one of my all-time favorite movies. I think Brokeback is probably in my top 30 all-time movies, maybe higher.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable movie. That scene in Brokeback it's one of my favorite scenes when Ledger's so mad because I think he walks out of the house because he's getting confronted by Michelle Williams, and that truck is driving and the guy stops and he starts yelling at him and Ledger tries to kick his ass, but then the guy just beats the shit out of him. It's such a good movie moment because you're you can't just stop a trucker and try to kick his ass because you're angry. You'll just get your ass kicked. Like that's like the reality of an emotional moment. Like that's as powerful as that. That's like such a good piece of writing.
He was a self-destructive character. He had that, sort of character flaw.
Any chance in the world you think that Heath was better in Brokeback than he is as the Joker? I've heard one or two people ever make this case.
God, it's totally possible. Yeah, I mean, there's just such different performances. One is very inward, and one is very outward.
Big.
Yeah, I don't know that I could choose between them. I mean, yeah, he won an Oscar for one, but maybe he should have won the Oscar for the other. I don't know.
I feel like in 05, I mean, Capote, like Phil Seymour Hoffman's pretty amazing in that movie. It's a pretty damn good performance. But I do love both performances. In general, like when you're reviewing and you're critiquing, do those big kind of performances usually get to you, or do you find when people go for it? Joker's the obvious one. I mean, everybody that's ever played Joker has done that same thing. But in general, really big shit does it get to you, or you look for those kind of quieter performances?
It again, I think it depends on the movie.
Sure.
It just has to fit. It has to fit the story. Because going big like that is a choice. And I do respond to I would say quieter performances. Maybe those are just the performances that I think of as Oscar worthy, or the movies or the performances that should be nominated for an Oscar. But I think if you gave me examples, I could tell you, which one I preferred over the other. But off the top of my head, I don't know.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's a million of them. I know you always talk about how much you like, festival films, smaller films, more indie movies. It's one of your major beefs with the Schmoedown question writers is that those movies don't get asked about enough. So, kind of in your profession when you're screening films, and I imagine you probably miss the experience of that as much as I do, because it feels like a huge gaping hole in my life. I like really miss seeing movies in movie theaters. Do you like 100% of the time look forward to those smaller films more than the big tentpoles? Is there any part of the tentpole stuff that you like, or it's always a little secondary to the smaller films?
I think a lot of that kind of stuff depends on marketing. It depends on expectations. I was pumped to see Suicide Squad, like as pumped as I am to see a new Fincher or PTA movie or something. And then that movie was just so bad. I was like, I called it the most disappointing movie of the year for Mashable, and people were like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, yeah, compared to your expectations, my expectations going in, it totally flopped. So I can be excited for the big movies, but the ones like Captain America: Civil War, I'm like, that's just another movie to me. I don't have any emotional investment really in those characters. I think I am more emotionally invested in a filmmaker and their career and our history together. How that filmmaker has told me stories in the dark over the last decade or two or three in some filmmakers' cases. I don't know. The big stuff just feels so anonymous.
I know what you mean.
Most of the time.
Yeah. It has to be like a true event or something really significant, unless you just love that kind of stuff. But the difference between obviously maybe you don't feel this way, but the difference between Civil War, for instance, and Infinity War Endgame is one of them feels like an all-time of a generation level event in a class. The other one is another movie in a franchise kind of a thing. So it's you can get totally invested in the outcome or the idea maybe with the huge ones where it's this is the end, or this, this is the last movie in, a 10-year saga kind of a thing.
That's the thing. I just feel like there is no end anymore. And that's what I've learned is they just don't leave things alone. And now that, you have Disney Plus mining the MCU for all these TV shows. It's just you're never saying goodbye to anybody because you could always just get their own show when they need a few $1 million. I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I think we are going to remember those two eras of at least that particular thing, the MCU, in terms of the Disney Plus era and before, because I think the idea that there's actually this cinematic tentpole that are the largest movies in the world, the biggest movie of all time, and now you're going to have to watch these streaming shows to be up to date on canon. Star Wars never required you to have that. It's the only thing I can think of where you actually are going to have to watch 8 or 10 episodes of a TV show to know what's happening in your favorite movies.
And just like there are people who have to watch every episode of the Schmoedown to understand what's going on with the different factions in the storyline. Some people tune in for that, and there will be some people who watch all those shows to keep apprised of what's going on in the MCU. And then there's just going to be a lot of people who don't care. And they'll fill in the blanks. And if there are blanks too big to fill in, that's really a Marvel storytelling problem. I don't think that they that the TV shows and a subscription to Disney Plus should be required to understand a movie I'm paying $18 to see in a theater. So, hopefully, like those connections, those bridges are more Easter eggs for the hardcore fans, and someone who's just, a fair weather fan can still appreciate it.
I'm sure I can't imagine they would ever design it so that if you see the movies, you like have no idea what's going on. I mean, I know people that watched Infinity War and had never seen an MCU movie and enjoyed it. So I don't think we really have too much to worry about there. You mentioned, one particular filmmaker or filmmakers that have had an effect on you for 10, 20, 30 years. And one of my questions here, we open it up to patrons on this show. Anybody at the platinum level and above here on Nerds and Suits can submit questions. So Dr. Meggs, who's a diamond patron, straight into the tide.
I like Dr. Meggs. I'm her new biggest fan.
She's great. Meg's one of the best. She says, if you could only interview and write about one filmmaker, including past and future projects, who could it be? Who would it be?
I mean, it's probably
a huge Fincher guy, right?
Yeah, it's probably Fincher. Just because, and I mean, I love Quentin and Marty and a whole bunch of other filmmakers, but like I'm just on Fincher's level. I think that that's the stuff I'm drawn to, is that darkness. Seven, Zodiac, Mindhunter. Like I love that serial killer stuff, and just the projects that I know that he has developed in the past or is developed. Like he just has great taste in material. Quentin, it would be amazing, but the stuff is just kind of it's all almost similar. It's like of a piece. Like each movie he makes is almost like a piece in a larger Quentin Tarantino puzzle, where I think Fincher is a little bit more versatile, even though I understand how he could be pigeonholed as well.
Well, I think your point is really interesting about that, because it's and you can tell me if this is what you mean, but I when I watch Tarantino movies very often, like 95% of the time, I feel like the characters all kind of sound exactly the same. Not every character. There are some that stand out that I think are really, really unique. But the way they speak, the jokes they make, the pacing, the cadence, all that. And that's just a function of him being somebody who exclusively writes and directs all his own projects, other than obviously one very famous one. And I think on the other side of that, Fincher's characters can have a Fincherism to him. Like I think John Groff in Mindhunter is a little annoying. He feels a little bit like a Fincher construct. Like he doesn't totally feel like a real
on the spectrum almost.
Yeah, he's and when I listen to him talk, I'm like, Fincher thinks it's really interesting to have this guy speak this way. I know that's why he does. There's just something about it that rings, but I don't feel that way about most of his characters, right? Like there is a small similarity between like Jake Gyllenhaal in Zodiac and John Groff in Mindhunter. They feel and sound kind of the same in some ways, but I definitely don't pick it up like movie to movie. Like there's nothing in Gone Girl that makes me feel like I'm watching a different David Fincher movie, really. It feels like its own movie.
He's attracted to similar themes and characters and stuff, but I think that it does help, you're right, to have different writers, whether it's Sorkin or Gillian Flynn or Jamie Vanderbilt, Andrew Kevin Walker. Like, I think you're right that like there are characters like Jackie Brown that I think are just completely unique within Quentin's filmography. But yeah, his characters do have a tendency to sound alike, and that's because they're all a piece of him.
But she's also a character from another medium, right? He didn't come up with that character. That's based on a book. So I feel like, and so I feel like that's almost, you're kind of proving my point exactly when I mentioned one very famous film. And so because I grew up like in love with Tarantino, like so many people did. I know you did. Like that early stuff, like Reservoir Dogs was my favorite Tarantino movie for a very long time. And it probably still is, to be totally honest. I think Pulp Fiction is still his most iconic. And I will tell you this, because you and I did this episode of The Action Guys like a year ago, and we were comparing Quentin Tarantino and Paul Thomas Anderson. We were kind of doing a pound for pound career. It was an interesting conversation. At the time, I think we had seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I didn't like it very much. I was not a big fan of that movie. Completely changed my opinion. It's like it might be my favorite Tarantino movie at this point. I've watched it like 4 times now, and I find it to be his funniest movie. Have you seen it more than once?
Yeah, I've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I would say 3 times. I thought it was good. I still have problems with that third act. And, I like plot-driven movies and stories. That's like a hangout movie. So yeah, I think it fell in the middle to the bottom of his filmography for me.
Okay, interesting. I think Leo's performance and character in that movie it might be the single most enjoyable Tarantino character. I find him to be so funny and so ridiculous, but I
The
don't know. It's
characters,
just
both of those guys, I think, are great. I definitely liked it more than Hateful Eight and Death Proof and those films.
Yeah, Hateful Eight's clear on the other side for me. That's my least favorite. I can't stand that movie. I think it's like borderline unwatchable. But so getting back to the Fincher conversation, because normally on this show we end up talking about whole wide variety of things, but we don't talk about like just deep cut into movies as often.
Mm-hmm.
But I do find that with you, that's one of the places I relate to the most. Is like I know we have similar interests with some of the creators we like. So Tenet just came out, which I'm assuming you saw and reviewed, correct?
I saw it, yeah.
So I watched Tenet. I went and I sat in an IMAX out here in the Irvine Spectrum with a N95 on, and I watched it. And it got me thinking a lot about the Fincher versus Nolan conversation again, because now we're fully 20 years into that comparison, and it feels like they're basically they're each other's counterpart for this generation. I feel like they represent in a lot of ways. Like one's very grand, one's very small, but they're kind of the most celebrated guys in exactly their time period who have been around for exactly as long. P.T. Anderson close because he's around the same time, but I would say that the two of them are celebrated more worldwide size of the movies. When you look back at those two guys' careers, is there any comparison for you? Is it close? Do you like Nolan close to as much, or do you think it's not even close?
No, it's
what do you think?
It's no contact.
Do you think there are things Nolan does better than Fincher?
I think that Nolan makes these puzzle movies that just do not hold up necessarily on rewatch. Like Memento. Like, how many times can you watch Memento? You can watch it twice, 3 times, maybe. The Prestige, another movie. Yeah, the first time you're like, oh wow, I got to see how he did that. And you go back, you watch it the second time, you're like, oh, that was a pretty good trick. Maybe you watch it a third time. You can't watch that movie 10 times like you can watch 7.
I don't agree because I actually think that Memento is a pretty simple movie. I've seen it 3 times. I saw it in theaters with my dad once sometime 10 years ago, and then again last December. And it's a little boring to watch now. It is a good movie. I appreciate what he's doing. But Prestige, on the other hand, I think Prestige has like a lot going for it. I find that movie to be very compelling, even though I know what's going to happen.
Once you know the big reveal, it definitely it has to take away the impact somewhat in a way that knowing the twist in Sixth Sense or Usual Suspects does not. I can watch The Usual Suspects 100 times knowing that so-and-so is Kaiser Soze. To me, it's not the same. Once you know the twist and the procedure is just like, okay.
So you would say you're comparing directly Usual Suspects, big twist at the end, one of the more famous twists of all time, and any of the Nolan twists, and you're just saying that The Usual Suspects does it so much better that the Nolan movies just aren't rewatchable for you. That's just a criticism.
It's about the story. It's about the story, not just the twist. I mean, the story of Borden and Angier is a good one, but is it one that I want to watch every year? No. I could watch Zodiac once a year.
The last few years I have.
I just think that David makes movies that really hold up on rewatch. Even something as maligned as Alien 3, probably seen that movie a half dozen times, if not more.
Well, you're just a psychopath then, because that movie's terrible. That movie's bad. But let me just ask you this: Fincher, do you have a clear top 3? Do you know the order?
Yes, I believe so. It's Seven.
Yeah.
Zodiac. And shit. I guess I don't. Social Network or Fight Club or Panic Room. Panic Room's so underrated. I think you have to go Fight Club.
I found it to be a little bit less than I expected it on recent rewatch. It's aged a little for me. Fight Club. I find it. I loved that movie growing up, but I think for me, it's not too far off. I think The Social Network for me is like the clear one. I find that movie to be so compelling and so rewatchable. It's like it might be one of the more rewatchable movies ever made.
Man,
no,
I don't think Social Network is terribly rewatchable.
I find the web of the story and like the pacing and the beats, like it's just, I feel like it's watching a train crash in slow motion, but in the best possible way. Like I build towards all those scenes. I love all those scenes.
To me, Seven is and always will be his best movie by far. It's perfection, and there's nothing I would change about it. Not an actor, not a line, not a prop.
Did you listen to the Rewatchables episode recently they did on 7? I know you listened
I
to that show.
didn't. I've actually been taking a break from Mr. Simmons and his ringer outfit. I have not listened to anything, including the picks with Cousin Sal, all summer. I don't really know what it was. Maybe out of spite. But yeah, I have just not been tuning into the ringer at all, so I missed it.
Yeah, I took a break for a few years prior to getting back into Rewatchables. I don't listen to BS podcasts anymore, most of the sports content, but I do find Rewatchables to be one of the more enjoyable shows. Not every episode, but they just did 7, and one of the things they were talking about was the ending. And I guess there was like 2 or 3 different endings. One that was shot and screened where like it just goes black. There's no credits. It was interesting. It was interesting to hear that stuff. I didn't know any of that because I do love 7. 7's grown on me more in the last few years. I think it's in the top 3 for sure.
7 is just
Gone Girl.
Perfect story. I mean, everything leading up to the finale, it all clicks together.
Yeah.
A good movie, you'll know what the end is before it happens.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I've never thought about that. So you rewatch stuff then? You're not one of these people that like refuses to go back and rewatch movies? Like I talk about this sometimes.
Which is, a very eclectic grouping. It's because it's not the popular movies. I'm a weirdo.
I only am willing to rewatch, generally speaking, after a Schmoedown match. For a couple weeks, I'll let myself watch whatever the hell I want because I don't have the obsessive compulsive feeling of needing to watch things I haven't seen. Usually lasts for about 2 weeks. And then I have a really hard time getting myself to just watch something I like.
You actually watch movies that you've never seen before, and presumably for a reason. You haven't watched them because you're not interested in them, not necessarily
that's
around to it, but just for Schmoedown purposes. That's why you're watching.
No. I have stopped doing the thing where I watch bad movies for the purpose of the Schmoedown. I refuse to do it. There was a minute where I did it. I watched every Star Trek and every Harry Potter getting ready for last year's Spectacular in sequence when I was recovering from back surgery. 23 movies in something like 12 days. And it was, they're good. Like the Harry Potter movies are pretty good overall. There's some really good ones in there.
How do you even know what happened when you're watching them like that back to back? Like, how do you even keep them straight?
It's hard to remember. Yeah. I can remember, bits and pieces. And then the Star Trek movies, I liked half of them and I hated half of them. But more than anything, my feeling was this was almost 50 hours that if I would have just watched movies from filmmakers I loved and stuff that maybe I haven't watched for whatever reason, I would have probably enjoyed these, I would have had like way more to talk about. I would have learned something. And so now I won't watch movies that I think are actively like useless movies unless, actually, let me rephrase that. Unless I'm distinctly interested in watching them. Like I will watch an endless number of bad 90s thrillers, all of them. Like literally any bad 90s thriller. It doesn't even, A Perfect Murder. I'll watch fucking any of them.
Eye for an Eye.
Yeah, dude. I like fucking all of them. It's the genre.
So since the pandemic started, I've found myself watching a lot more comfort food and shows. Like a lot of Seinfeld, a lot of Curb and The Office. Have you been watching that kind of stuff that you've seen before, but it makes you feel good? And
I did. I've gone through little pockets, right? Right after losing to Bibiani and the Kid, I hated that loss so much. For a few days, I watched really stupid shit. I watched like a lot of really bad Adam Sandler movies just cause like horrible movies for the most, even some Netflix ones that are not in the Schmoedown.
Like you feel like you were 13 again.
Yeah, and also just like the need to sort of not pay that close of attention and laugh at like Rex Ryan and in That's My Boy and think it's just like dumb stuff. I'll go back and do you know how many NFL people there are in that movie? I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
I love That's My Boy. It's fantastic. I tried to get my dad to watch it with me the other week, and I showed him the trailer. He was like, no.
It's not very good, but it's got some very funny parts. The fact that his like lawyer is his bookie is Rex Ryan. Aaron Andrews is like the receptionist at like the agency. Dan Patrick's in the movie. I was like, who fucking what?
Dan Patrick's in a ton of Happy Madison movies. They go way back.
Yeah, it's funny. So I watched a handful of Sandler movies. I rewatched some MCU just for fun because I do love those movies. I tried to
do an interview with him this week, and they turned me down.
Who, Sandler?
Not Sandler. See, the average person would request Adam Sandler, right? That's who they want to talk to. He's the star of the movie. I don't give a shit. I want to know about Adam Sandler. And the way to do that is to ask Tim Herlihy, who's written practically every Adam Sandler movie, and Alan Covert, his producing partner at Happy Madison. So I was like, I'd love to talk to these two guys, but they have to like be willing to like go down memory lane and talk about some shit, not just say, oh, Adam's the greatest and I love working at Happy Madison.
Yeah,
and
of course. Interesting. Yeah, I think talking to Alan Covert would be so fun, man. The guy's been in. He probably has so many fun stories.
The formula of like, how does a Happy Madison movie get made, and like, how do they decide which, who they're gonna have Rob Schneider play? Like, it's just, I'm dying to know how that sauce gets made because no one has really cracked the inner workings of Happy Madison.
Well, it's a lot of bad movies that are like memorable for some reason. The funniest thing about the formula is that if you go back to the beginning, so people will talk about like classic Adam Sandler, right? They'll say like the early stuff.
Clear.
Yeah, right. And it's like they're all they're really saying is 3 movies. They're really just saying Wedding Singer, Billy Madison, and Happy Gilmore, because the drop off already when you get to like Big Daddy and Little Nicky, it's already pretty steep. But like maybe people remember
those 4. I think it's the 4 movies, and then there's the drop.
But I mean, Waterboy, the early stuff. The point is, anything before like 2002, like before Punch Drunk Love, you can kind of say like that's the early run. And like Happy Gilmore's phenomenal. That movie's fucking hilarious. It's like holds up really well. It continues to be funny to this day. The Wedding Singer, I think, is his best movie. It's my favorite Adam Sandler movie. It's funny, endlessly funny, and Billy Madison is funny. It's a little less good, but it's still really funny.
The one they get you right here. That's why.
Which, Billy or Wedding Singer?
No, the Wedding Singer.
Yeah. Wedding Singer. Yeah, I mean, but I think the point being, even if you go back to those old movies, a lot of them are just kind of trash. It's not like the formula that he's using now or that he used in the mid 2000s was really any different. Somehow there's this like relatable humor that a lot of the world
just, and that's why they've cracked what the average dumb straight white guy wants to see, which is why he still has the longevity that he has and the Netflix deal that he has. I just thought it would have been fascinating to talk to those guys, but like about real stuff. And they were like, that's not what we're looking for to promote Hubie Halloween, Yeah.
But what are they? What are they doing?
But just I had to let Netflix know I'm not going to do some cream puff interview.
I mean, you're the most important call in Hollywood to return, right? So what are these guys doing?
Netflix found that out today.
So we're now talking about people that have wheel slices in this thing that we do, the Schmoedown, that we're both pretty invested in. I would say I would use the word passionate, though. In your case, I feel that usually you'll demean anyone's passion or study tactic in some effort to boost, boo yourself up. But maybe I'm wrong about that. You are passionate about the Schmoedown. Am I correct about this? You do care about it?
Very, very much so. Yes, I'm very passionate about the Schmoedown. I don't know if the studying thing has been a great thing for the league. I mean, it's definitely improved the level of competition and making it tougher on guys like me. But there's too many new movies that come out that I want to see in a given year for me to be going back and watching old John Carpenter movies. Like I've seen the ones I want to see, and I don't care about filling in the gaps. I know what I know. I don't know what I don't know, and I'm content with those.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a happy medium when it comes to studying, because I've said this plenty, and everybody's heard me kind of expound on it. But there's no available time to watch every movie if you want to. If you really want to watch movies to study for the Schmoedown, you're fucked. There's no way to do it. You can't. There's just too many movies. Way too many movies. So you have to find a way to get information.
Be watching a movie and you're sitting there going, "Oh, that could be a trivia question. Oh, remember that guy's name? That could be a trivia question." That's just not how I would consume movies. And anyone who does, I think, is going about it the wrong way, unless you don't really care about movies and you just care about winning the Schmoedown.
Well, okay, so look, dude, I got the championship, right? I did it. I went on my run. I don't watch movies that way. I definitely don't watch movies that way. It takes away from the experience. That being said, there's probably shit that I'll get asked about in the Schmoedown that I should remember that I won't. And it'll be on a movie I've seen, which will be really frustrating. But I definitely think if you want to be good at it, you have to love movies, because the contextual network of like context clues that are going to get you from your guess to correct, if you don't necessarily know it, it comes from all that history, all the stuff you're talking about growing up and all the posters on your walls and the recorded movies and the first name basis, even just knowing Alan Covert's name is like so much deeper than most people really would go, but it would get you from point A to point B, because someday they might use Alan Covert's name as a cast member in some movie that's going to get you there, and you're the guy that knows it.
Sure, but I acquired it. I acquired the knowledge, I guess, obviously through what I do, but just through watching movies, from watching Grandma's Boy or whatever. It's not from studying it. And I'm not trying to get down on people who study. Like, if you do what works for you, I don't need to. Maybe I should, but I don't necessarily feel like I need to until you study the categories that you submit for the wheel. So if you land on those categories, you're prepared for them.
I mean, I think you're underselling the nature of you. You're a huge sports guy. I know this, and you're underselling the nature of this is a sport, right? If you know the other team and what they're going to be doing, and all the weight of the ball and the fucking distance from goalpost to goalpost and like the distance of the 3-point line, these are all things you try to take advantage of and exploit. This is just the nature of sport. So if you're trying to win, you want to win, then there's more to it than what you're talking about. You have to try to examine every
few weeks, and I play the Schmoedown, and then there's people in the Schmoedown who are playing trivia 7 nights a week. 7 nights a week.
That's crazy. You mean like fan leaguers? You talking about?
I'm not going to say who, but I just know that there are people who play trivia. It's not 7 nights a week, it's 5 or 6 nights a week. The point is, they're playing multiple times a week and being exposed to a litany more questions. They're watching every Schmoedown episode, and it's all to succeed in this league. But me, I just watch movies and show up once every few weeks.
Well, I think you're like a lot of the classic players. You're from the original generation in this league that does that. And I think you've also gotten very far doing it. I mean, obviously, I think it's safe to say you are the greatest teams player the league's ever seen. You've won the championship on 2 separate teams, defended, 6 times. So you've done that thing. You've played in a singles title match. You've got a match that airs later today against Mark Riley, which, we can't talk about anything really about that match, but you're going up against another guy from that original generation, and you've made it pretty far in a tournament. So like, you do have a shot. You do have a shot based on exactly what you're talking about to go all the way to get that singles title. Would it mean a lot to you if you got it?
I mean, yeah, it would, but I also it's tough. It's tough to get through an entire tournament, I think.
It's incredibly hard. Yeah.
So it's like you really have to win 5 or 6 matches, whatever it is, to win that belt, as opposed to just I got myself a title shot, and now I got to win 1 game. So it's a different way of looking at it. Yeah, it would mean a lot if I got it, but at the same time, if I don't get it, I'm not going to think of myself as not one of the game's great players. Yeah, and that's what I want to be looked at as. Not a great teams player, a great singles player, just one of the greats, period.
I think you've already achieved that. I think there's 120 people or something that have competed all time at this point. And I think you're on pretty much every single person's top 10, a lot of people's top 5, some people's top 3. And I know in your own mind, number 1. So you're in Roxy's top 2 all time, that's impressive. So
sweet. Yeah, listen, I've had some success. There are definitely some people I have not beaten or had a chance to play. So.
I've never played you one-on-one. That's never happened before. That'd be a fun one. That'd be a fun one to have happen.
We're rumbled in the Bronx.
Yeah. You have been pretty outward about, if things go bad in this year's team's tournament, because obviously you've got this team's tournament with Mark Andreyko. You may not be long for that team. You might move on from it, and you've talked about possibilities. So Bob Finstock, my current manager, total buffoon, somebody I'm definitely never playing for again. He has talked about picking you up. This is the thing that he said it this week on Backstage. He said if he was going to build a faction around somebody not currently on the exchange, he couldn't pick anybody who's currently on the exchange. He would start with you. That's his quote. So how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel great, and I feel like every manager should probably think like that. If I was starting a team and I couldn't build it around Dan Murrell, yeah, I'll build it around Jeff Sneider. That should be what every manager's thinking. But I don't know if I'd go back with Tom after working with him on Lion's Den. He's definitely had some success with you guys, but I sure do love working with Roxy.
She's a terrific manager. She works her butt off. It definitely looks like her players love to play for her. So I'll be curious to see how things go, after this year. Say what?
She's a player's coach. Let's see if she can, take me to the promised land, though. Let's not get ahead of us.
Yeah, man. Well, you're playing against my guy, my teammate, Mark Riley, and I'm excited to see the match. I'm very excited to see how things turn out. So you guys can watch that a little later today. That airs today on SEN at 12 p.m. So, but the next, say what?
He's good.
Yeah, he's damn good. So the next question we have here is from John Lestrina, who's another diamond patron in the Nerd Network. Big time tie straight into you, John. Also a general in the Action Army. So call sign #ladies night.
You say that on the first date when you meet women, you're like, I'm actually a big time support. I'm in the Diamond Army Nation Club.
You'd have to ask the supporters, but I will tell you that our generals all have call signs, and they're very near to their heart. And I know, like, a lot of them, reference their call signs. They should be proud of them. It's a big honor to have a call sign. You don't have a call sign, do you?
Earn a call sign or enough money to a call sign.
Well, his question to you is, what do you miss most? What do you miss most? What do you love most about seeing a movie in a theater?
The nachos and the pretzel bites.
It's the food? You miss the concessions? No. Okay,
I so do. What do I miss most about being in the movie theater? I mean, I miss trailers. I miss just watching movie trailers beforehand. I mean, not that they, surprise us anymore because everything goes online first. But that was always great. I miss talking about a movie, getting out of a movie and looking over at the person next to you and being like, "What'd you think?" And then having that post-screening discussion in the car at the restaurant. And also, the sound.
Yeah, that big full surround sound feeling. I miss it so much. I'll tell you what, when I saw Tenet, I was so excited to be in a movie theater again. I was just walking down the long IMAX hallway to get into the actual screening room. I was just grinning like an idiot. I was so happy. I felt like, like full of life. And then I sat down, and I swear to God, 25 minutes into the movie, I could not stop smiling. And watching the trailers.
No one could see it.
No one could see it because my fucking mask on. Yeah. It was great.
Special to be back for Tenet, and I'm glad that I got invited to do that in Boston, and because I wouldn't go with the public. So, you're braver than I, because I really want to see New Mutants. I'm not going to see a movie in public because people are morons. But when you're with 5 critics, you can hold those people accountable, since we're all technically there at work. And I felt safe. I definitely felt safe inside the theater with a few people. But again, it's a different scenario if you're, depending where you live and who's around you.
Well, yeah, it's weird to be an LA critic and have those relationships, but they have no ability to give us screenings. We can't do it. So I checked in with all my contacts this week to be like, hey, in so many words, wanted to make sure you didn't get furloughed, which is like basically what you don't say in the email. But like, that's what I was thinking about. It has been months and months since I've talked to so many of them. It was like, I hope you still, and they all were like, yeah, nothing exactly going on right now. We'll get back to you as soon as we have stuff we can send you to. My screening I went to was 11 p.m. in an IMAX theater. And so there was 13 people in this enormous auditorium. I had nobody within 25 feet of me, which was great. But yeah, I'm in the same boat, man. Like I was pretty freaked out by it. It took Tenet to get me into a theater because I don't think it's safe. I don't think that the general public should be seeing movies in full theaters.
It's not worth the risk. Even if it is safe, you don't know that it's safe because this is an invisible virus. No movie is really worth it. Although I don't know if they threw Mank out there, Fincher's new movie, if Netflix put that in a theater and was like, this won't come out until next summer on Netflix, I might be like,
how do you feel about the whole like streaming property versus theatrical thing? Because my feeling is that, let me rephrase it so I can give you a more specific question. Like the shelf life of a digital property, something that streams, is so much shorter. The conversational shelf life of it is so fast. They kind of come and go, and we talk about them for a few days, and then they get replaced by something else. And unless they're on the forefront of like the homepage of Netflix for like 3 months, they just aren't like these cultural centerpieces in the way. Even like The Five Bloods, like that would last like 3 days, and then it's just over. how do you feel about these prestige directors and these huge films getting digital releases?
That's a very good question, because on one hand, you're right. 3 or 4 days after Da Five Bloods came out, nobody was really talking about Da Five Bloods anymore.
Yeah.
However, would anybody have been talking about it at all if it just came out in theaters one weekend up against two tentpoles, in the middle of summer? Probably not. So it gets that spotlight, even though it is for only 3 or 4 days. The fact that it gets that mega spotlight from a place like Netflix in the first place, that might be worth it. I don't know.
I don't know, man. I mean, Black Klansman was a similarly promoted, like, great cast, full movie, came up against tentpoles, was really good, and didn't make a crazy amount of money. It made money, and it got talked about because, like, we all screened it. We all saw it together and reviewed it, and, like, our fans saw us talk about it, and we, like, it felt like a normal movie. And until I think
not everybody saw Black Klansman on that first weekend. Like, it had legs, and word of mouth is allowed to build. And you're right. That's a rare thing on a streaming service, because the word of mouth goes so quickly. If you didn't watch it Friday, you'll know about it by Saturday or Sunday, and then you'll watch it. So that is certainly part of it.
I think in 5 or 6 years, it won't be the same anymore. It's an unavoidable trajectory. This is not going to reverse. We can't go back. This is just the way it's going to be from now on. And I hope that movie theaters survive and Netflix opens their own theaters in which they show other films as well. I hope, the people that have success carry the torch, because I do want theaters to matter. But in 5 or 6 years, when Scorsese or somebody releases a movie on a streaming service, it won't have a 3-day shelf life, because that's going to be how major movies exist. It's just that right now, for the next, let's just say 5 to 10 years, while that transition happens, they will. That is exactly what it is. And these movies are going to get gobbled up and lost in the same way that I think many 2020 films will. Do you realize how absurd this year is going to feel in memory for movies? It's like, this is going to feel like a year that didn't happen. It's literally going to be like when the Oscars switched from a 2-year span or a 1.5-year span to a hard 1 year. I won't even remember the year fucking movies came out, because I won't even be sure what technically a movie did come out when,
I don't think that they should have the Oscars ceremony this year. I don't understand it. There's only going to be even 30 or 40 possible titles. Like, I just I don't know why they don't just say the Oscars are canceled this year. We're having them next year as usual, like in late February, early March, whatever it is, and we're going to honor 2 years in film. I don't see why that's so hard.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, they in the way old days, they used to do that shit. They used to break the rules.
The Oscars this year, when Netflix is the only game in town submitting movies. I mean, when French Dispatch got moved out of award season to next summer or whatever, that was a sign where it was just white flag.
Well, yeah, I definitely think it's a different landscape, and I'm very excited that it feels like we're, I don't want to say on the home stretch, but it definitely feels like we're, there will be a brighter future, and I don't think it's going to be 2 years from now. I think more than likely by next summer, things will feel a little bit more, I think there'll be a safer way to have a movie theater experience. I hope. God, I hope.
I mean, it'll be the first place I go once there's a vaccine. Inject me, and I'm off to the movies.
Yeah, me too, man. I was thinking about, on this road trip when I go to Seattle, because they're open in Seattle. I have a couple N95s, so I might bring like an N95 and get a face shield. And I honestly might go watch everything in one day, spend like 8 hours in a theater, and then just go get tested. Just like,
again, listen, I think it's safe. I think most of the time you would be fine as long as you wore a mask. I wore 2 masks during Tenet, and gloves, and a poncho, as you saw on Instagram. If you're wearing a mask, I think you will generally be okay. However, it's not a flight. People are still taking flights because they got to get someplace. You don't got to see a movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You got pretty sick right before this. Do you know, did you have COVID or was it something else?
I very well could have had COVID. I was not tested for COVID. I tested positive for influenza A. So I had the flu. Okay. Because of that, they were like, well, you have the flu. We don't need to test you for COVID. But I did. I've been, I've gone to the ER before for breathing treatments, and had to get a nebulizer. This was definitely different because I needed like 8 nebulizers and bags of liquid as well. And it hit so hard, so fast. So I may very well have done it, but I fortunately made a quick recovery, and I felt fine all summer.
Yeah, it looked freaky, man. It looked really freaky. So how much longer are you going to be in Boston for? Do you know? Do you have kind of a
I
return
don't
date
know.
yet?
You know what? Ask me when it gets colder. When it gets to be 20 degrees in 2 months, then I'll be on the next flight back. But when I came back at first, I was like, well, maybe it'll be end of summer, August, and then I was like, well, maybe it'll be October, and then I was like, well, maybe it'll be December 1st, and I just don't really see the situation improving that much. I don't know that I necessarily want to wait to have a vaccine because that's a long time. But why pay LA rent when you're not getting LA perks? Like there are no industry events. I can't really do lunches with sources. Like nobody's hooking up. Like I just, what is the point of being there and paying through the roof?
Yes, I completely agree. I have been doing all of my jobs from home in this little corner of my apartment, and I'm going to go to Seattle, and I don't know how long I'll be there for. At least a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but shouldn't have any impact on my. You say what?
Maybe you won't want to leave. Maybe your mom won't let you.
Nah, I don't know about that, man. It's since I've gotten older as when I've started to realize how much of a psycho I am about personal space. I like struggle to go see my family now for longer than 2 days at a time. I've said to my mom before, and this like breaks her heart. I was like, I think I just want to get a hotel when I come to town, and I could see the heartbreak through her eyes, which I'm not going to do. I'm gonna stay with I'll stay at my dad's house because he's in Switzerland.
I did a 2-week quarantine, Ben.
Yeah, well, I'm driving, so I'm not gonna be on an airplane.
That's fair. Okay, that would make sense.
I'm going to be in my own car. I do, because my mother is in her 70s, think that when I get to town, before I surprise her, I think I'm going to get a test anyway. I have no symptoms at all, but like I still am so worried about it because of her age. And I want to hug her when I see her. I don't want to have to not hug her. I want to hug my mom. So,
Sure.
That's the plan probably is to get to town and get a quick test. Actually, speaking of this road trip, it's one of the things I've talked to you guys here on the channel about. So you all know I'm obsessed with this guitar, the Gibson Hummingbird. It's the most famous acoustic guitar of all time. And I am buying one this week is the game plan. I'm going to be bringing it with me on a road trip to Seattle. I'm going to be finishing writing the rest of the record. And a lot of you guys have been raising money to get it. So I'm going to just be covering whatever we don't raise. That's the plan. But if you're watching this and you're thinking, I've only wanted to ever support you in your music one time, streamlabs.com/nerdsandsuits. Donate to the guitar fund. It's an unbelievably expensive guitar, but it's the nicest thing I've ever seen. And I'm going to be vlogging and keeping record of all the music I'm writing, and I'll share it with you guys when I get back. So if you guys want to support, that's the way to do it.
Well, if you can play Ace of Base on the guitar, I could sing. We could be Ace of Base together.
We could do a duet. Are you recruiting me to be on your Schmoedown team next year? Is that what's happening?
You wish. You wish, buddy.
You've taken an endless number of shots at me at this point, which is funny to me because I can't wait. I can't wait to play you.
I only take shots at people who I know can handle the shots, and that's why you get most of them.
Mm. You've also said that you want to play with Roca, though, so that's where the distinction, the difference. But you've also beaten Roca a lot of times, though, in the Schmoedown. Like how sweet was it for you that when Top 10 finally broke up, they had never beaten you guys? That had to have been such a puff out your chest feeling and moment to know.
Beat me at anything, like from like a game of checkers in the office to like a race to Chipotle. Like I can't give John an inch because if I give him an inch, he's going to take a mile.
He's doing really well with Outlaw Nation stuff. It's been actually very cool to see. He's putting a ton of work into that network, into that channel, and it looks like it's taken off. It's doing really well for him.
I am a big believer in John Roca. I think he's a very hard worker, and and I think that I think he's a good writer. He needs an editor, and I was happy to be that editor. But he's a good columnist. So I'm glad that he's getting he's found a platform to get those opinions out.
Yeah. You mentioned writing. I know you've mentioned this to me once before. You've done a bunch of writing, obviously. I mean, writing like covering stories, but actual like writing of a script. Is that something you're still interested in doing? Are you still working on that kind of stuff?
My problem is that I don't have the follow through. So I could sit there and get a great idea and type out 20 pages. And then the next day I'm like, oh yeah, I did that last night. And I don't finish. So I've got a bunch of half finished things, but all these contests and writing programs. And it's like, I never get into any of them because the sample that I'm sending is a mess. And it's like, I know that. So yeah, I definitely don't do as much writing as I had planned when I went to writing school. But taking a peek behind the curtain of this town is just very depressing, the way that writers get treated and the way that they get hired. I think you reach a certain age in this town, you stop getting hired. I think people are getting hired for the wrong reasons these days, based on their skin color and their gender. And it's like, what just happened to just being a good writer? But good writers finish scripts, and I can't seem to do that. So.
You don't? Well, it's interesting you talk about when you write something and it's a mess when you send it in. As you're writing, and this is not just for story writing, but when you're writing like a piece to cover a story, can you feel as you're writing it like, oh, this is pretty good actually. Like this is coming from somewhere real. I feel inspired with this, or feel stale.
That's why I don't finish scripts, Ben, because I'm my own worst. I mean, all writers have to be your own biggest critic, right? You have to, and so I know what's good. And I know that what I have may be on the right track, but it's not like something that I would count. Like I have a lot of, let's say, sources in town. And when I have a script that I think this thing should get made and this thing's shootable, I will send it to the entire town. I have never done that in my 14 years or 15 years doing this, because I just don't have anything that meets my own standard. And that may be a fatal flaw of mine. But yeah, I got high standards as a critic, high standards all over, and it extends to my own stuff.
It's interesting you say, because the only place I can relate, I'm not a big writer. I've written some stuff in my life. I write a lot of good emails, but actual narrative work is not something I do. But I have written a lot of music. I've written a lot of music in my life, a lot of lyrics, things like that.
That's cool.
And I can always
admired, by the way. I have no musical talent, and anyone who does is like, oh, I'm jealous.
Well, the interesting thing about it, and if you're telling me you're jealous of me, I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you. But what I've noticed about it is you kind of have to just push through and listen back to it after. You can't judge it while you're writing it. Now, I can tell you 100%, does this feel like something when I'm writing it? That much I know. That's, I think, where it's the same thing I'm asking you. When you're writing it and you're like, there's something behind this that I can just feel it, so I'm going to keep going with this. This is good. I know I'm going to look back at this part of it and I'll like this part of it. But you can also tell when you're writing, when you're like, this just feels so fucking contrived. There's nothing about this feels inspired. This just feels like I'm going to listen to this back and be like, any idiot that wants to write lyrics that sound cool would write that. That's what they would write. So why am I writing that? And you don't want to finish it. It's hard to push past that feeling, which I imagine is the same thing you're talking about.
Yeah, I guess. I think I have good ideas. It's just a lot of people have good ideas. You have to be able to write with like a 3-act structure and character arcs and all that stuff. And I mean, look, there's a bunch of terrible movies where it was like, oh, if you gave me a day or two with that script, I could have made that movie 20% better. But you just don't get to weigh in on everything. I don't know. I wish that I was more disciplined as a writer too. That's the other thing, it's late at night. I could be working on a script. Instead, I watch a movie or a TV show, or I look at porn or whatever it is, and
sure.
Right.
Do you think you can have a great movie with a horrible script?
No, I think I'm someone who all I care about is story. So I would have watched Tenet on my phone, and I would have loved it if the story was great. Like, I didn't care. I don't really care about how a movie looks. I just care about the story that they're telling. I don't care who's telling it. I don't care whose story is being told. Just tell me a good story and I'll be happy. Yeah.
Do you think you can make a horrible movie with a great script?
Yes. Yes. A director can screw up a great script. Absolutely. And I think any writer will tell you that. I think it would
anything come to mind?
Huh?
Any specifically that come to mind? Like really movies where the script was phenomenal and the movie was bad?
Oh, no, not off the top of my head. I'd have to do a little bit of research and put some thought into that. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Well, actually, the Hateful Eight. I loved reading the Hateful Eight. I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. This could be so good. And then it just felt kind of inert. So I'm with you on that being Quentin's weakest movie.
What about that movie do you hate so much? I just found it to be, well, you tell me and then I'll tell you.
What did I hate about The Hateful Eight? I mean, I just ultimately, it's like, what are they trying to even find out? Who the murderer is, or where what is the point of The Hateful Eight again? What are they finding out?
I think so. I mean, yeah, I'm trying. I can't just concretely tell you. I think there's like a murderer they're trying to find in their midst or something.
Yeah, it's just it did not have the same like power of a Reservoir Dogs. So it seemed like this exercise in service of a feudal reveal or goal. Like I didn't care, and so the whole movie was kind of pointless. Why? What did you not like?
I mean, it's not memorable for the reasons you're talking about. Like, I can't really remember much of what's happening in that movie. I felt like from kind of the time the movie started, I was kind of like, in a way that some of these movies I don't. That's Sam Jackson and that's Kurt Russell, and I just, you guys are just reading a Quentin Tarantino script. You guys don't feel like characters to me. And then within the first 20 minutes, it was like, I understand the character you're writing, Kurt Russell, but why are you dropping the N-bomb so many times? Why is this a necessary way to start this movie? 30 minutes in, I just wanted to turn it off. They got to the cabin and I was like, everything about this, if this is going to be what I'm watching, and this movie's almost 3 hours long, like what's going to happen that's going to make this great? I already know what this feels like.
Yeah, it felt like a chamber play that just wasn't worthy of his dynamicism. Just how dynamic Quentin is as a director. So I just don't think he knew what to do with his own script. You know, like he has so much energy as a director, and then he wrote himself into a corner, kind of.
Yeah, that's fair. Last couple questions here before I let you go, because I know you gotta get out of here in a second. So you got Austin Powers on the wall here behind you. Close place in your heart, that one? Was that one that you, growing up, you loved the Austin Powers movies?
I was Austin Powers, dude. I was growing up to girl, yeah, baby. Yeah, I loved Austin Powers. What is that? 1997. I was 13 years old. I had a key.
Yeah.
I had posters. I had the Dr. Evil monologue poster where it's all about, you know, getting with the scrotum and whatnot. I loved it. I had posters for both the movies and obviously this stand-in, but yeah, that was my humor, man. The piss that wouldn't end, and the sight gags holding things up to, you know, block body parts. Like, I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, it's really funny. I mean, it's definitely, it's great. Like, I think that movie holds up really, really well. I still find it to be as funny today. So then I'll end with just another movie question here. Do you have a distinctive favorite film of all time, or at least the top 5? Do you know that or no?
I always sort of give the same top 5 or whatever. I think it's I just say Pulp Fiction by default, Silence of the Lambs, like Heat, 7, and like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Maybe
interesting.
Dog Days up there too.
So the two like real iconic 70s films, and then everything else just early 90s, 91 to 95. It feels like,
basically. I'm not really that decade for me did not do it for me at all.
I'm in the same boat. I've said this before and I've gotten ripped apart in the comments. I think the 80s is the weakest decade for films ever. I don't hate every 80s movie. I think there's some great 80s movies, but by and large, the ones I've never seen that someone's like, you should watch this movie, I tend to watch it and I'm always like, God, if there's no decade that feels so distinctively like this is the fucking decade this movie was made in. I can just tell this is an 80s movie. Everything about the way the characters look, the sound, the grain of the film, it just looks, I can't stand it.
I kind of like the look of 80s movies, but it just, I think what really worked were like movies that were comedies or aimed at younger people, like Stand By Me and The Goonies and Big. Those are some of my 80s. But the stuff that was winning Best Picture, like, who wants to watch Out of Africa? Like, give me a break.
Still never watched it. Still never. I considered watching Out of Africa literally last night, and I still haven't done it.
Yeah.
It's weird. Yeah. All right. So one more movie question, then I'll let you go. Genre. You have a genre that's like the one you should be watching more of that you don't? For me, it's horror, right? That's the one I I don't really watch horror movies. I never really have.
Genre that I don't watch enough of. I guess musicals.
Yeah, okay. That's another one for me too.
Yeah, westerns. I haven't watched a lot of either of those, but
I like westerns a lot more than I like musicals. I mean, they were such hallmarks of the '60s and before, though. That those were like the primary genres. Those were like the big Oscar movies. Were those two? Why musicals? You just don't like them?
I don't. But you know what? Because I need something to make sense. And what doesn't make sense to me is when people who have never met before start suddenly in a scene together singing a song that is like they just all know the words. It's all choreographed. Like, how would they know how to do this in unison? They just met. So yes, I can't wrap my head around that with musicals, which is why I prefer, when we're talking about my favorite musicals, things like Once or Sing Street, where it's about the making of music, kind of, rather than just everybody bursts into song.
Sing Street is one of my favorites. Once is one that's been recommended to me a million times as a musician, and I keep telling myself I'm going to watch it. I haven't yet. Is it great? You highly recommend it?
Once is not great. It's a masterpiece, number one. Number two, you, Ben Bateman, are going to love Once. This is going to be your new seller, okay? You're going to be Glenn Hansard, or whatever the hell his name is. I forget, there's so many Glens. But yeah, trust me, you're going to love that. I love singing that soundtrack. You'll love it.
I can't wait. I mean, I loved Sing Street so much when I saw it last year. I was blown away by how much I enjoyed it.
Out of the water.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Maybe it's tonight then. Maybe tonight's the night that I finally watch Once.
Didn't watch with a girl.
Yeah. Well, we'll see, man.
Save it for her, Ben. Otherwise.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm frozen. I'm frozen in carbonite in that department at the moment. So we'll see.
We all are. We all are. Holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Sneider, the Sneider. He's got a match coming up tonight against Mark Yodi Riley. Watch it. Well, it's actually this afternoon, but it'll be nighttime for you. Best of luck, man, and best of luck in the team's tournament. You've got my number when the season's over. You can beg me to be your teammate if you want. But, maybe you guys will be champions. Look
at him laying the groundwork, just subtly putting his name into the mix. I am loyal to Mark Andreyko. I am faithful to him, and we're going to win the tournament. Thank you for having me. Drive safe back.
All right, brother. Take care. And that does it, guys. Wow. Pretty funny talking to Jeff Sneider. The guy is full of energy, has a lot of crazy shit to say, but is definitely entertaining. And of course, in the Schmoedown is one of the great legends. So thank you guys so much for watching. A big time thank you to all of my double diamond patrons here in the Nerd Network. We've got Thomas Goslin, Jake Iacovetta, Jeremiah Morris. Big time thank you to each and every one of you guys for supporting me and being double diamond patrons. So get excited for all the cool stuff going on. Thanks for watching the show. And as a quick reminder to everybody here, as we mentioned earlier in the show, I am going to be buying this Gibson Hummingbird guitar, as I'm going to be writing a bunch of cool new music and going on the road, this cool road trip with it, and hopefully have a lot of good stuff to share with you guys. So if you're interested in supporting, if you're watching this right now and you want to donate, go to streamlabs.com/nerdsandssuits and just send a donation of any variety. I'm excited. I can't wait to share that with you guys. So thanks for watching the show, and please leave a comment, like, subscribe. It definitely helps the episode when you guys do leave a comment. I will respond to all of them. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.